Meanwhile, an Indian student is said to have been killed in Russian shelling in Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. This as New Delhi has urged Moscow and Kyiv to secure a safe passage for nearly about 12,000 Indian nationals. Most of them students who have gone from India for their higher studies to Ukraine to be secured. Now, the Indian student has been identified as Naveen Shekharappa, a 21-year-old medical student from the southern Indian state of Karnataka. Now, the medical student at the Kharkiv National Medical University was living in one of the bunkers in the central part of Kharkiv. He was headed, it is reported, to purchase food when he was standing in a queue, and that is when a missile struck Kharkiv. The Indian Prime Minister has also now spoken to the father of Naveen Shekharappa. Now, earlier in a tweet, the Ministry of External Affairs confirmed the death of the Indian student, conveying its deepest condolences to the family. Now, the MEA spokesperson also said that Foreign Secretary is calling in on the ambassadors of Russia and Ukraine to reiterate their demand for urgent safe passage for Indian nationals who are still in Kharkiv and other cities in the conflict zone. Now, remember, Kharkiv is the second largest city in Ukraine. It is believed to be one of Russia's first military strategic targets. It's located just 30 kilometers from the Russian border in the northeast of Ukraine. Russian missile attacks have hit the center of Ukraine's second largest city, including residential areas and the regional administration building. Now, Kharkiv is believed to be home to almost about 3,000 Indian students, and this is the second highest number of students in a Ukrainian city after Kyiv. And also, according to reports that are coming in, no Indian nationals are now left behind in Kyiv. Earlier, the Indian embassy in Kyiv had asked the citizens to urgently leave the Ukrainian capital. This, of course, has come as the Russian military convoy is closed in on the city. Before Russia's invasion, there were nearly about 20,000 Indians in Ukraine. And since then, many of them have been brought back by the Indian government by special flights that it has now flown. There are still about 40% who remain in places like Kharkiv and the Sumy area. The other half have reached the western borders of Ukraine and are now heading towards other borders such as to nations like Poland, Romania, etc. to try and cross over. Now, there are reports, of course, of Indian students being harassed while trying to cross over into neighboring nations. So India, of course, has launched a massive evacuation plan to try and get these students back home at the earliest. The operation, of course, has been called as Operation Ganga, an initiative to airlift Indian students to safety. And helming this initiative, of course, are 4 cabinet members, sitting cabinet members of India, who will be looking after the evacuation efforts and coordinating the evacuation efforts from 4 different countries over the course of the next 3 days. At least 26 flights have been scheduled to bring back Indian citizens. Now, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called the Indian Air Force to evacuate the Indian nationals. The Indian Air Force will, of course, join government's Operation Ganga. And according to reports, it will also deploy its several C-17 aircrafts to bring back the Indians who are stuck in the region. The IAF aircraft will also help deliver humanitarian aid to the conflict-ridden region. And WION's Siddhant Sibil has been tracking the story very closely for us and has sent us this report. Listen in.
Well, I'm standing in front of India's Ministry of External Affairs, where both the Ukrainian envoy and the Russian envoy were called in the aftermath of the tragic development of an Indian student dying in that shelling that happened in the city of Kharkiv. Now, this is something that has really angered New Delhi. We know that New Delhi has asked both Moscow and Kyiv to form a safe passage for the Indian students. But so far, we know that the escalation continues, situation deteriorates on the ground, even as India mounts its Operation Ganga, under which it is bringing more and more students. There are roughly approximately 1,700 students in Poland itself. The Polish government is playing an important role, like the Hungarian government, like the Romanian government. The Indian External Affairs Minister has been in touch with the foreign ministers of these countries. In fact, the Indian Prime Minister has spoken to the leadership of those countries, including the Slovak leadership. But nonetheless, this is a tense time in New Delhi, like in various global capitals, from Washington to Beijing to New Delhi. And of course, India is right now prioritizing the safe return of its nationals particularly the stranded students, whether it's inside Ukraine or at the borders. Sudhan Sibul for WION in New Delhi.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.